Charlie Saffro is the founder and CEO of CS Recruiting, also lives in Chicagoland just like myself. Charlie empowers leaders to uncover their everyday power, embrace their influence, and create extraordinary outcomes. As CEO and founder of CS Recruiting, Charlie knows leadership goes beyond metrics as it thrives on trust, collaboration, and engagement. A keynote speaker, TEDx presenter, and thought leader, she inspires audiences to make a difference and foster cultures that they're proud of. Charlie's passion for a human-centered workplace drives her mission to help leaders recognize the power of small actions, create meaningful ripple effects, and build thriving teams and culture. Charlie, welcome back to the CultureCon virtual stage.
Thank you, Zach. I'm excited to be here. I love this organization and really excited to get with you guys again, share some thoughts on culture and how you can build a culture on a budget. So I'm going to get my screen share set up. Let's make sure we can all see it. Awesome. We're good. All right. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Charlie Saffro, and as Zach said, I am the CEO and founder of CS Recruiting. We're a boutique recruiting firm that specializes in logistics, supply chain, and transportation. I will tell you more about my story as we get through today's presentation, but what we're here to talk about is company culture and really how we can create or how we can elevate our company cultures to be collaborative, to be connected, to make sure that employees feel alive and fulfilled, but doing it with small gestures that create a big impact, and alongside small gestures, a small budget. So I want to share today what I've learned about culture, and I've got kind of two different points of view. So I am assuming that some of you on the call may be in talent acquisition, or if you're in human resources, clearly you're very familiar with the recruiting process. So one of my points of view comes from being a recruiter for over 20 years. As I mentioned, I've recruited specifically in the logistics, supply chain, and transportation industry. But over the years, as a frontline recruiter, I have had thousands and thousands of conversations with job seekers, and some of them are actively looking and potentially unemployed. Others are happily employed, maybe open to the right opportunity and passively looking. But in these conversations, I've really had an opportunity to understand why people join companies, why people stay at companies, and why people leave companies. And about 15 years ago, I started my own recruiting firm. I've spent the last decade and a half scaling, building my firm, and being a leader of my own team. And from a leadership point of view, my team has also had thousands of conversations. And while we've talked to so many different job seekers, we've also talked to hiring managers and executives and leaders. And really what I've tried to do is take these best practices that I've learned and take tips and stories I've gained from other leaders and other job seekers along the way, and really create a culture of best practices. When I started my business, it was a bootstrapped initiative. I didn't have a loan or an investor. So I've done everything on a small budget, and in the early days, no budget at all. And what I'm here to tell you is that culture is not just pizza parties. It's not perks or casual Fridays. It's the human stuff. And it's often really hard to define because it's a feeling and it's a vibe. But what we're going to do today in the next 45, 50 minutes is talk about what culture means and then really zero in on this idea of employee recognition. And I'm going to share ideas that are free and hopefully ideas that you can take away and you can start using on your team as early as today or tomorrow that will make an impact. So I want to start by sharing a story of how I learned about culture in my very first job. So I'm not going to give you the year, but it was a long, long time ago when I graduated college, and I started working in the advertising industry. It was a very cool job. It was a job I had my eye on, but it was really a sweatshop. I mean, I have no other way to say it. It was that work hard, play hard type of culture. We were expected to work very long hours. The customer was always right. And I honestly got into the work, and a few months in, I didn't love the job. I didn't love the environment. I wasn't making a ton of money, but I found myself at the office of all hours of the day. But I had a supervisor that I worked with. She was maybe 2 or 3 years older than me. Her name was Tiffany. And Tiffany would do this thing where she would leave me sticky notes. I would go to a meeting and I'd get back to my desk and there would be a pink sticky note on my computer monitor. And it would say something like, "Great job speaking up in that meeting." Or I would stay late one night to make sure that we got a client's FedEx out. And the next morning I'd walk in and there'd be a yellow sticky note on my cubicle chair. And it said something like, "Thanks for staying late. This team wouldn't survive without you." And these sticky notes ended up making a really big impact on me. They were free, they were simple, but Tiffany always knew the right message to say and when to leave me a sticky note. And she did it because it was something that she truly enjoyed. I don't think she was expected to do it. She wasn't getting anything out of it other than my appreciation. And this little ritual of Tiffany's, pun intended, it ended up sticking with me. And as I built my business and I built it on a budget, it was something that I started doing. We were in an office for about 10 years before we went remote near the pandemic. And when we were in the office, I would practice that sticky note ritual. I would leave employees a sticky note in their top drawer, or I'd put it on top of their notebook. And sometimes they were, very intentional. I wanted someone to know that I saw them with an action or behavior. Sometimes it was just to make someone smile, but I kind of got into that habit of leaving people sticky notes. And as we evolved into a remote organization, I started putting them in the mail. And the truth is then, I guess I was spending a little bit of money because I was paying for the price of a stamp, but it was this whole idea of making people feel seen and this concept of surprising and delighting them when they least expected it. So I got in the habit of leaving sticky notes for the same reason that Tiffany did. It was just a little something to make sure people knew that I saw them and that I appreciated them. And as the years went on, I would continue to do it, never expected anything in return. And about 2 years ago, I got a text from a former employee. Her name was Abby, and it had been maybe 3 or 4 years since Abby had worked in my organization. And Abby shared a text, and in the text, she shared this picture. And this is a sticky note, if you will, that I had left her probably 5 years prior to that. And in the text message, she shared with me that even though it had been many years since we worked together, she had this sticky note in the middle console of her car. And in her text, she shared with me that it was very unintentional, but she kind of found herself looking at that note every time she was in a funk, every time she had a dilemma in her career. And she shared that this one little note always reminded her that there was someone who cared about her. And this text is something that I wanted to share with you all in this image, because it wasn't the act of me leaving the sticky note that made the difference in this situation. It was the fact that she hung on to it for all those years, something that I did because I truly enjoyed doing it, something that I honestly forgot that I ever left her this note. And she reminded me that it is those little things that make a big impact. And what's most powerful about this story is Abby's been at 2 or 3 different organizations since she left our team. And what she shared with me is that she has evolved into what she called the sticky note girl, but not necessarily just sticky notes. She has taken this idea and adopted it as her own. And she's become that in-house cheerleader on every team that she has sat on since she left our company, whether it's a sticky note, whether it's a high five in the hallway, whether it's a Slack message that shouts out someone. And she shared with me that it was just this small little practice of these reminders that you're important. I see you. I see your little wins. I see your big wins, and the intention behind that. And I wanted to share this story as your first takeaway. And I know someone mentioned this in the chat, that it is such a simple yet effective thing we can do is these handwritten notes. And if it's not a handwritten note, it might be a Slack, it might be a text, it might be a quick email, but this is really what we're going to talk about today, is how we can use some of these tools and these best practices to create a culture where people truly feel seen. And we're going to talk a lot about this idea of employee recognition and appreciation, and how you can really put that into practice, whether you're starting a new organization or you're just looking to level up your current culture and your current recognition program, because this is really what culture is about. So this is how we're going to spend our time today. First, we're going to talk about how culture itself is a company's competitive advantage. We'll then dive into the power of recognition and appreciation within the workplace. We'll talk a little bit about what that actually looks like and some of the tactics behind it. We'll talk about how we can actually put it into action and really bring some of these ideas to life in a way that does not require a huge budget. And along the way, I'll be sharing some real world examples. If you have comments, if you have anything you want to brag about, please put it in the chat. I'm here to educate and teach from my experience, but I also know that you are all a wealth of knowledge and we have so much to learn from each other. So at the end, we'll have a couple minutes for Q&A. Feel free to throw your questions into the chat and we can revisit those or just bring them up at the end when we get to that Q&A. But my goal is in the next 45 minutes or so, you're going to walk away with a handful of ideas. Some of them are going to be scrappy. Most of them are not going to have a budget required, but at the end of the day, they're all proven ideas that will make your culture stronger. So I want to start just by breaking down this big idea of culture and how it is your competitive advantage. So we all know culture matters. I mean, we're here together at CultureCon, so we all joined this for a reason because we believe culture is important. But culture is something that is really easy to talk about. It's just really hard to define. And at the end of the day, it's this feeling of how we work together, how we feel when we're working together. And culture is what drives trust, it drives retention, it drives performance. And I want to share this quote from J.W. Marriott because I think it says so much about company culture. And I'll read the quote out loud. It says, "If you take care of your people, they'll take care of your customers, and the business takes care of itself." And the reason this quote stands out to me is because a lot of times in my work, I talk about culture, and I work in a very male-dominated, aggressive, rough industry of trucking and supply chain. And I tend to get a lot of eye rolls or leaders telling me, you know, this is a fluffy topic. I'm not interested in talking about culture. But when you spin it this way and you really think about how culture affects not just the employees at the organization, but in the end, it affects your customers, your clients, and it affects the bottom line. That's when you start to get the attention of leaders who are just trained to think about P&L. They're trained to think about the ROI and what's in it for me. So I want to talk about how culture isn't just fluff. It is something that can truly make a difference on the organization, the people in the organization, but also the bottom line and the customers and clients. So let's look at that connection between culture, employees, and the ROI of engagement. Culture, we know, is about making people feel good, but that's not all it is. So I want to walk you through this diagram that starts with an idea of employee satisfaction. We all know that in the workforce, it's human nature. Employees are humans. We want to feel valued. We want to feel supported. We want to feel connected. When you have satisfied employees, it often leads to higher employee productivity. You have people bringing more energy, more creativity, more focus to their work. And when you have productive employees, you often have better service, which is going to drive happier customers. When you have that customer satisfaction, you are going to start to, in turn, build that loyalty and retention. And then that customer loyalty is what translates into profits, which is what leadership generally cares about. But along the way, you're reducing that churn. You're bringing on loyal customers, repeat business, word of mouth referrals. And I share this cycle because at the end of the day, those profits lead right back into employee satisfaction. And this is a cycle that it plays out in every company. You can take a look at your own company and start to connect these dots. And the challenge is that a lot of leaders that are brought up old school by the book, they try to reverse it. They try to chase the profits first and they think, okay, once we're in business, once we're starting to make money, then we'll invest back in our people. And we hope that they'll be satisfied and they'll want to work harder. But the reality is it always starts with your people. And there are a lot of ways that we can influence our employees. There are a lot of ways to create employee satisfaction. And today, as we're talking about doing it on a low budget, we're going to focus on this idea and this powerful idea of employee recognition. So recognition is one of the simplest and the least expensive levers that we have to make a difference. And I want to start by sharing some data, and then we'll get into some of the tactics and stories. So first piece of evidence is 65% of employees say that they don't get recognition for their work. And that's a really high number, which makes me sad that the majority of employees in today's workforce actually feel like they're not seen. Companies that are rich in recognition, companies that make it a priority, they have established programs and processes and different rituals in place, see a 31% lower turnover. So almost a third lower in turnover, which is very significant. Almost 80% of employees say that their production is tied to recognition and how they are seen and appreciated by their peers and their leaders. The number one reason people leave companies is not about money. It's usually a lack of positive reinforcement. It's usually this idea of feeling like they're a number or they're a cog in a machine. Only 35% of companies even have a recognition program in place that's documented. And of those companies, only 10% of them actually say that their program works. A lot of them just have a program in place to check the boxes, but there are more efficient ways to do it, which is what we're going to talk about today. And lastly, employees who are recognized in ways that make them feel seen and make them feel like they fit in and they're a culture add are 3 times more likely to stay loyal. And in my business, I always say that you can't recruit unless you can retain. And it's another cycle where you need employees who are happy, who are proud to represent the company. So you can go out and recruit new employees. And it's part of this whole continuous cycle of building a culture, employee engagement, and leadership. So there is an author out there named Dan Heath, and I had an opportunity to see him speak several years ago. He talks a lot about this idea of moments, about capitalizing these small moments in life, in work, where we can make a positive connection and we can contribute to someone's experience. And he talks a lot about this idea of recognition and appreciation in the workforce. And he says something that has stuck with me for years. And he talks about recognition as being one of the easiest things that we can all do, because it can be a simple gesture. It can be that handwritten thank you note. It can be that Slack message. But even though it's one of the easiest things we can do, it's also one of the most forgotten things, because it very quickly goes to the wayside when we have business issues and escalations and projects to get done. So I want you to just remember that it's the most forgotten, but it's the easiest. So let's flip that and make it something that stays easy, but it's something that it's so easy, it's top of mind, because we all see what a huge difference it makes. So we're going to break this down and talk about recognition and what it might look like in a day-to-day environment. And I'm going to walk you through a couple different layers based on where your organization is today, the size of your company, and the maturity of your culture and your human resource team. So I want to share this idea of, first of all, why recognition matters. And I don't want to beat a dead horse, so I'm going to fly through this slide quickly, but we start with employee recognition, and we start with like the psychology of it. We're all humans, and we know what it does to us, what it does to our motivation, how it fulfills us, how it makes us just a little more passionate when we are recognized. But behind that, what recognition does is it boosts engagement. People will show up more fully when they know they're being noticed. Supports learning and development because it encourages growth, it encourages curiosity. We want people to be taking risks and going outside their comfort zones. And the more they're recognized for doing that, the more they'll continue to do that. Recognition enhances culture because it reinforces values in action, where people can actually see those values coming to life. It increases employee motivation. People get a taste of it and they always want more. It sparks innovation because it makes people think outside the box and fuels creativity, and it reduces turnover. And when people feel valued, they stay, and retention is what we're all after as leaders. So when you look at the input of recognition and the output of all these benefits, that's when you start to see that cycle really coming into play with that improved customer satisfaction. So breaking it down into a pyramid to talk about the ways recognition can show up in a workplace. I want to start with this top layer and formal recognition. Now, formal recognition can exist in a company of any size, a company of any years of presence and maturity. But when we talk about it being formalized, this is more of like something tied to HR. There's a formal process, there's a program in place. I would say that our team does have a formal recognition program, but it probably took us about 10 years to get there. So we've been in business 15 years. For those first 5 years or so, it was very informal, very day to day, which I'm going to walk you through in this pyramid. But eventually you get to a point as you scale where you realize like we need to formalize this. And recognition needs to be organic. It needs to be genuine and authentic, but there is a way to keep it authentic, genuine and organic while still having some formalized process. And keeping it formalized, make sure that it's fair, it's equal, but it's usually tied to a larger initiative that's managed either by a leadership group, individual leaders, or an HR team. And what formal recognition might look like are planned events. This is what we do on employee anniversaries. This is what we do when somebody on our team has a life event. This is how we celebrate awards or promotions. So that's why it's formalized. It's usually documented and there's a system in place. And it's often linked to a company's value, but also if there is a budget in place, the budget ties directly to your formal program. Now, the next layer of this is more informal. And this exists, again, in very established, mature companies, but you're going to see a lot more of that informal recognition with startups or companies that are still in growth mode. When it's informal, it's a little more flexible. It's usually driven by peer-to-peer or by managers, not necessarily through a leadership or a culture-focused team. An example of an informal recognition is, a high five, maybe a shout out on Slack or even on a company LinkedIn page. It's that on the spot recognition, small or free incentives, and it doesn't always need a budget. What it needs is consistency. So if you decide that for every time, and in my world of recruiting, every time we have an offer accepted, if we decide to recognize and appreciate and shout out one person, even if it is informal, we want to be consistent about it. We want to make sure that every time we get an offer signed, we've got some level of recognition and appreciation for the people on our team that have achieved that accomplishment. Now, moving on to day-to-day recognition, this is really the most important layer because this exists in every organization, whether it's day one or whether you're celebrating your company's 100th anniversary. It's frequent, it's personal. And the coolest thing about day-to-day recognition is it's not top-down, it's not mandated, it doesn't have to come from anyone, it's available to all of us. And I think that's something that's really important is this whole notion of being intentional, of seeing other people, appreciating them for their big wins and their small wins. We all have access to acknowledge other people, and it doesn't need to come just from a leadership initiative. Now, this might include simple thank yous, like what I talked about, notes of appreciation, or just those verbal or written shout outs. The key with the day-to-day is to be specific, make sure that the people who are being recognized know why they're being recognized, and make sure that the people who are observing it understand why you're recognizing them, what they did, but most importantly, the impact it had. And this day-to-day is really the foundation because you can start to build programs on top of it. When I started my business, and I'll go back to my sticky note story from the beginning, it was very much of day-to-day recognition. I did it when I noticed something. I tried to distribute it evenly and equally so nobody felt left out. But as our company matured and the years went on, we started to formalize different things. Now, the sticky notes still live on today, and they're still very spontaneous and in the moment, but where I once maybe left someone a sticky note for, a win or finishing a project, we started to formalize that as we grew and matured as a company. So we've always had this day-to-day recognition, and as the years went on, we started to write down some of the things that were working and started to make them more process driven to a point that in our organization today, I would say we operate with all three of these layers. We have some things that are very formally recognized, some things that are more informally recognized, but we're consistent with it. And then we have a lot of things, and truly it's just part of our culture's DNA, this day-to-day recognition where we encourage it, and we call it out, and we make sure our team members feel empowered, not just to recognize their direct reports, but most importantly, to recognize each other, no matter what their title is, no matter what level they're at, and no matter what position they sit in our company. So we're going to take this pyramid a step further now, and I'm actually going to give you some examples of what this could look like and some of these touch points of how recognition can show up in your workplace. Okay, so I'm going to share the same pyramid here. We've got formal recognition at the top, the informal piece in the middle, and the day-to-day recognition at the bottom. But let's talk now about what these behaviors look like and what this actually, how it appears when you put it into action. So I'm going to go through some very tactical things here, and some of these touch points that can be recognized at these different levels, and some of them you'll see kind of creep into more than one level. So the first thing is employee anniversaries. And while I'm talking, I think this is a great opportunity for you all to engage in the chat and share. If anything catches my eye, I'll notice it, but it's more so you can all connect with each other. And I want to ask, like, what happened at your last anniversary? And, you know, if it's in a position you're in now, were you recognized? Did you get a Rolex? Did you get a plaque? Did you get anything? Because I think anniversaries are probably the easiest place to start, because if you're in business and you know how to hire people and retain them, your first employee's anniversary is going to creep up on you, and it should be a formal recognition. Now, I give a talk with some of this information regularly, and I'm often surprised. Maybe like 3 or 4 months ago, I was talking about this in a room of about 60 people, and I asked how people were acknowledged in their last company anniversary, and 6 people raised their hand, which meant that 54 out of those 60 people were not recognized. Their anniversary came and went. Some of them didn't even realize it was their anniversary, but it was disappointing when they started to realize how easy it could have been for their peers, their leadership, their management team to just at least give them some sort of recognition on making it a year or 2 years, or in some cases, 10 or more years. But I put this at the top of the pyramid because as companies get more mature, this is something you need to formalize, because you want to keep it consistent. You want to keep it exciting. You want people to look forward to their anniversaries. This is also true with promotions. As you scale as an organization, you will inevitably move people up the ladder and promote them. And these should be things that are formalized, that have a checklist, that have something that triggers the reminder to whoever's in charge of this program. I love seeing everyone sharing. So eat that up. These are all great ideas, and this is an opportunity for you all to learn from each other. The next thing I want to talk about is new hires. New hires is something that you see kind of fall into 2 categories, formal or informal. Now, when you're onboarding new employees, you definitely want to have some sort of formal process. You don't want that person to feel like they're that new face in every meeting or in the hallway, and people don't really know who they are or why they're in the office, or if they work there, or if they're just there as a visitor. So you can start out with it being more of that informal recognition, but as you grow, it is something you want to recognize formally and have a system and a process. Every time we have a new hire, we, announce that person first in our company meeting on Mondays. Then we follow up and we share a little more about their background on Slack. And then we take it to LinkedIn at the end of their first week and congratulate them for making it through week 1 and congratulate them for being on our team. So that's where you can kind of see the shift from the formal and informal blending together. Another thing is team awards. Team awards are interesting because they can actually fall into any of these 3 different categories. So this is all discretionary. It's all very situational, but it's this idea of, whether it's an award that you create. We do Employee of the Quarter awards, and we recognize them formally in a slide deck during our quarterly team meetings. we recognize them a little more informally, where different people in our organization may post about it on LinkedIn or may send someone a one-off email or Slack. But then it's also about that day-to-day. When somebody wins an Employee of the Quarter, it's something we refer back to and we talk about and we want to bring to the surface so that person is celebrated and they're consistently celebrated from various people in the organization. The next thing is big wins. These are, closing a contract, finishing a project. This is something that you can formalize, you can make it more informal, but it's also very appropriate in the day-to-day world as well. Same thing with little wins, that appears in all three of these categories. And then general performance or feedback, when an employee maybe develops a new skill or overcomes a big initiative. There's different ways you can recognize them, whether it's formal, informal, or through the day-to-day. And then birthdays, life events, these are often the most memorable, but they can be acknowledged in any layer. So I share this because the point here isn't that you have to do all these things. The idea is that you pick a few of them that make sense for your team and you do it consistently. And now that we know what it could look like and how it could happen, I'm going to come back and show you some real examples, so just hang on tight. But before I do that, I want to talk about this idea of recognition and rewards, because they're related, but they're not the same thing. They're maybe more like cousins. So moving on to our next slide here, and looking at recognition and rewards as serving different purposes. So on the left, we've got our rewards, and rewards are exactly how you imagine them to be. They're tangible perks. They're often tied to milestones, achievements. These could be anything from like a bonus to a raise to a contest prize, a gift card. Rewards are usually going to be top down because they do require some sort of budget. So it is going to be a leadership initiative. But when you think about recognition, that can happen anywhere. It can be top down, but it can also be peer-to-peer. It can also be from the bottom up, where an independent contributor is recognizing somebody on their leadership team, which it doesn't happen often enough, but it's always appreciated when it does. Now on the right, we've got this idea of recognition, which is more intangible. These are usually verbal or written appreciation. These could be very frequent, and it's not always tied to a performance metric. It's not always documented in such a way. It's encouraging people, and really what recognition is it's reinforcing behaviors in real time. So when you see someone acting in a certain way, behaving in a certain way, the more you reinforce it in the moment and acknowledge what they did and the impact it had, the more they're going to do that, and the more their peers are going to do that, and people are going to pick up on it. Now, I know that, we're talking about this idea of rewarding and recognizing people with a budget too. So you've always got to start with recognition. Recognition is always free. It's always available to us. It's always very, very powerful. If you have a budget, when you have a budget is when you can bring in this idea of rewards, and rewards can really complement recognition. It's not a substitute for it, but like I said, they're kind of cousins, they go together. So on our team at CS Recruiting, we started with zero budget. So our whole foundation, our whole culture really was built on recognition, hence the handwritten notes that I shared. But as we started to grow and mature as a company, we started to add a small budget for rewards. But the recognition piece has always been consistent. So we are very good about recognizing our team ad hoc, but also in some very planned situations. But the reward piece is designated for very specific situations that align with our values. They align with the behaviors and the actions that we want to inspire, and then they obviously align with our budget. So when rewards are part of this equation, they don't have to be big. They don't always have to be expensive. And I want to share on this next slide some ideas of monetary and non-monetary rewards. So when we think of the monetary rewards on the left, they're usually tied to a budget. I would never expect an employee of mine to spend any of their own money on a peer or a manager. Sure, there are situations where people on our team, want to pool and contribute for a gift for someone. But when you think of the rewards, it's going to be a leadership initiative, and it's going to be top down with that budget tied to it. These are great for milestones. They're great for achievements. So whether it's hitting a specific goal, celebrating an anniversary, acknowledging someone's promotion, they're great motivators, but they're very different from recognition. So on the monetary side, I mean, most obvious is bonuses, increasing someone's salary. But there's also things that you could do that maybe, buying someone lunch or sending a gift card to their favorite manicure salon, or giving them a ticket to an event that they're interested in. So when we think about a monetary reward, I want to encourage people to think beyond money. It does not always have to be about money. It could be something that really leans into who that person is. One of the things that we do on our team that has been really impactful, and somebody may have mentioned something like it, but we use a platform called Gift Hero. So when our employees start, we ask them to go on to Gift Hero and to pick gifts that it's connected to all these different online retailers, and to pick things that they would like to have at different levels of budget. So people can, put things in this imaginary cart, if you will, from Amazon, from Nordstrom, from Home Depot. And then when we have something to celebrate, our HR team can go into their Gift Hero and look through it and choose something that's very meaningful to that person. A cool little bonus is when we do a holiday party and we have a white elephant or a secret Santa, we also have those gift heroes available to our team. So you could certainly be creative and go out and get your own gift, but if you really want to deliver something to a secret Santa and that person's going to like it, you have access to this list of, a wish list of theirs. So I think on the left, these monetary ideas, many of them can be executed for anyone in any environment, but if you are spending any money, the more personal you can get, the more meaningful it will be. Now on the right, I'm sharing some non-monetary rewards, and this is what our team got really good at in those early days. How can we reward people even if we don't have a budget? My favorite one was parking spots. We had a small parking lot with our first office. A lot of people ended up parking on the street or having to walk a block. So we gave up our parking spots, and I think we had 3 parking spots that came with our small office, and we would give those out to our employee of the year or for acknowledgement when somebody had hit a huge goal. That's something that's very easy, and it was, technically free for us to offer. You can give half days or days off. Something that we do a lot on our team is we'll do like a group contest where, everyone has an opportunity to earn a half day, and if the whole team hits their goal collectively, then we'll give the full day off. So there's different ways to do that. And yes, I know that we can interpret this and say, closing our office for a half day costs money. But I'm trying to give you guys ideas that, don't necessarily require you going out and buying something. Sometimes it's just letting people, take a couple hours in the afternoon, take a walk with their peers. The e-cards are a great idea. Emails, going back to the handwritten notes. So these slides are up here now, but feel free to take a screenshot of this if you need some ideas. And also, I hope you guys are taking some ideas from the chat, because there's some great tips in there that go well beyond what I am sharing here. So the takeaway here is that non-monetary rewards are very accessible, and they also create a lasting impact. You don't always need to have that budget and spend money to make people feel seen, feel appreciated, and to make them remember how they felt as part of your company culture. So now I want to look at some tactical ways that our team has brought recognition to life. And I'm going to walk you through the recognition and the reward. So here's an example of one of our employees who recently celebrated a big anniversary, 9 years. And the recognition here is, first, there was some one-on-one recognition where when we have any anniversary, different leaders on our team, different peers are reaching out because they know it's that person's anniversary, because we make it known. We create an image like this. We put it in our company Slack. We post it on LinkedIn from our company page. As the CEO, I always will post these as well from my own LinkedIn page. And then we'll see different team members posting their own anniversary and putting that out there because it is something they should be proud of. So something this simple where we're just creating the graphic and putting it in these different channels There's nothing I love more than when I post something like this and, the employee's dad or mom or brother comments and shows their pride for their family member. And that's where you can really start to create this connection. Now, when we have employee anniversaries, we also do have a reward in place, and it's based on their tenure, but we do a tenure raise at different markers. And then we also go back to that gift hero I spoke about, and we do an anniversary gift. And what I love about this is when we send these anniversary gifts, it can be really random, but it's what the employee wants. And I'm thinking back, we just had an anniversary last week where, one of our employees got, I think, a new pair of shoes, a new record because they collect records, and then a small gift card because we had a budget to spend. So we picked a couple things from their gift hero and then we made it up with that gift card. So there is the recognition piece and the reward piece that we put into play. And this is what's formalized. So there's a lot of that informal acknowledgement and recognition as well. When our employees move and they buy a home and, assuming that this is something they want to share with us, we love to celebrate that because many times our team was part of it. If they've been working for us for a long time, they've been working hard to save up for this new home. They've been talking about it. So the recognition is announcing this. This is usually an internal announcement. This isn't something that the company is broadcasting on LinkedIn. Obviously, the employee can do so if they choose, but there's always a recognition piece where we are celebrating their new home and celebrating it with them. Now, we do try and do a small reward, and it's usually a housewarming gift. So we keep it consistent. We keep it low budget. I think right now we're on a kick of giving personalized doormat. So sending our employee just a doormat for their new home. And I think it's about $25 maybe. So this is another piece where we recognize them, but we also have a budget that is discretionary, but it's there for a reward. Birthdays. So for employee birthdays, we always do a team card. It used to be a handwritten card that we sent around when we were in an office. Since we've gone remote, we've made it an e-card, super easy for people to sign, and it gets sent to them on their birthday. And then the reward we offer is every year we give employees a day off in their birthday week. So most of them will take their birthday off, but they have the choice if they wanted to take it off on Friday or Monday. But again, it's a small gesture that goes a long way. I know birthdays really don't have anything to do with the workplace. They haven't hit a milestone. They haven't gotten a promotion, but we see our people as humans. And so we do look at their birthdays as something we want to celebrate with them. And we want to do something that makes them feel important on that day. Here's an example of one of our value winners. So one of our values at our company is to be curious. We do these awards where every quarter we acknowledge different employees for different behaviors that really modeled them living our values. So the recognition here is an internal announcement. We will also post it on LinkedIn, allow them to post it if they choose to, which they should, have some bragging rights. And then if it's in budget, we will do a small gift card. But again, something like this, the parking spot is always a great idea, or something like that for a reward. I talked a lot about employee promotion. So this is an example of a graphic we make when an employee gets promoted. You'll see that it's got different quotes from other team members. So when we have a promotion, we usually solicit feedback from the entire team, and it's really cool. In this example, Kyle is able to see the impact that he made, not just on the business, not just on the clients, not just on the job seekers he's worked with as a recruiter, but different comments and real testimonials about what his colleagues and peers have to say about him. So the recognition is this graphic that, again, we put in Slack, we share in our meetings, we put it out on LinkedIn, and then the rewards that come with it. Obviously, there's a new title. In some cases, there is a gift that comes with it, or a raise, increased commission based on their tenure and the promotion that they're eligible for. And then lastly, this is just because. So something that I like to do every year on Valentine's Day, I send my team a handwritten note, and that's just the recognition, reminding them that they are an important part of the team. But I do a little reward, and this is something I choose as a leader to do out of pocket, but I'm going to give you all a really great tip here. So that little tag that you see in the picture, I'm trying to get my pointer to it, but you can see it's from Wendy's, the fast food restaurant. And what Wendy's does every year is they sell these little tags that gives you free Frosties for a year. Now, caveat, when I started doing this, they were 99 cents for the tag. So I buy a tag for every employee and they get Frosties for a year. I think they're up to $3.99 now, but it is a donation to a charity that Wendy's supports. And what's so cool about this is that it is a gift that keeps on giving. So my team knows it's no surprise anymore, but on Valentine's Day, they'll get a little Frosty tag for me. And then over the course of the year, I'll get texts from them or Slacks, and it's a picture of them with their Frosty or their kid with a Frosty. And it's something that, you know, they're constantly thinking of because they're going to put this little tag on their keychain, and it lasts for an entire year. So if you ever need a small little incentive for your team or even for one person, I think I usually buy these at the end of the year and they're good for the next calendar year. So keep that one in mind. So hopefully these ideas, just bringing them to life, some actual tactics that you can use. So I'm going to fly through these next few slides just to make sure I leave time for questions. But I want to talk about putting it into action. So there is real science behind this. I know, you know, all this is feel good and maybe a little fluffy, but there is science why kindness and gratitude makes us better at work. So paying it forward isn't just good for them, it is good for you too. It changes our brain's chemicals. When we acknowledge people and see them, it releases endorphins, it boosts happiness, and it does it for the giver and also for the recipient. So if you've ever given a gift and realized, like, I actually felt better giving the gift than I would have receiving it, you understand how the chemical balance works there. You can get creative with your giving. So like we've talked about here, these don't have to be huge, grandiose programs or budgets. They can be small and thoughtful, but those are the gestures that really add up. Remember that kindness builds on itself, and the more you practice it, the easier it becomes. And everything we're talking about today is kindness. It is really going beyond yourself to make sure people know that they are seen and appreciated. And it can decrease stress. People who show respect and acknowledgement for others report less stress. Compassion is literally a stress reliever. So recognition isn't just a leadership tactic, it's truly for employee wellness and well-being. And when we're able to prioritize it, everyone truly benefits, and the company culture, the DNA of that company culture is the result. So let's take all these theories and these practices and take a look at how you can actually put it into action. So quick breakdown. Step one, allocate a budget per person for the year. And if there is no budget, you still have these ideas in place where you can execute a recognition program. Step two is to define best practices and a plan. You can reflect on some of the ideas today that I shared and what you've seen in the chat, but really the plan and the best practices need to stem from what is most important to you. Determine who's going to be accountable. I think there was a comment in here about that. In some teams, it is the leader. In some teams, it's the HR team. In some teams, it's Barbara from accounting. And it really doesn't matter. It's this whole idea of having a team of champions, but making sure that there is someone who is accountable and consistent. So having one person who's in charge of the office birthdays or one person who is in charge of acknowledging the anniversaries, just make sure that there's a system in place. Recognize barriers. So budget could be a barrier, but hopefully we can get past that with some of these other ideas. And I would say what you really want to be thinking about is equity and equality and making sure that people feel like they're all being seen and acknowledged in a fair and equal way. You want to create awareness once you actually have a program foundation, so that may contribute to building a training program, but this is a team effort to create that awareness and training. And then you want to measure it consistently and frequently, because none of this will do any good if we don't know how it's working and what is working. All right, key takeaways, and then I'm open for questions, but what we covered and what I really just talked very fast through was a lot of stuff. So just a quick recap. people want to be recognized. We all know this, but there is an ROI, and people do work harder if they feel like they are appreciated. There are so many opportunities where we can customize recognition, and I think the more mature you are as a company, the more people you have behind the program, and obviously if there is a budget, there is so much opportunity to customize recognition. There is a test out there that I highly recommend, and I don't have it linked here, but you might be familiar with the 5 love languages. There is a book and a separate test for workplace appreciation languages. This is something that we've done on our team. So we know how our team wants to be appreciated. We know whether, they actually want quality time, whether they want gifts, whether they want words of affirmation. It doesn't necessarily determine how we appreciate them, but it helps us just understand what they're going to respond to and maybe lean into one of those areas more. So that's a great exercise, maybe a team building exercise, to have everyone in your company take this workplace appreciation quiz and really get to know each other, but they'll also get to know a lot about themselves. Companies with recognition programs see an increase in engagement and often in production. Recognition should always have these different layers. So no matter how big or mature you are, you're going to have formal programs, informal, and then also that day-to-day. Recognition and rewards are different, but they pair together very well and often. Recognition can be monetary or non-monetary, and focus on these recognition touch points, because that's how you're going to identify new opportunities, new areas where you can really impact the team. So with that, I will wrap it up and open it up for some questions. I'm seeing in the comments section, oh, you use the 5 languages of appreciation. I love that. I'm going to scroll up to see if any questions came in. Lots of ideas, which these are awesome. And I hope the CultureCon team can summarize these and share them out so you all don't miss anything. But please put some questions in. What platform do you use for e-card signature and birthdays?
Yep.
That is a great question. And I'm going to see if I can answer it real quick. Hold on. I'm going into my email because I'm not exactly sure, because that's not something I manage, but I'm going to tell you right now. It is called groupgreeting.com. And I want to say we pay $1 for each card. So I don't want to mislead you. That one does cost a little bit, but we pay $1 a card, and I think we buy it on like a subscription package basis. So we used to, like I said, do actual greeting cards and handwrite them, but this is a great substitute. Any other questions?
While we wait for some more questions, I'll just say that was amazing. Nick and I were like texting each other during it, like, these are like simple, no brainer, like everyone should be doing this, like but they aren't. So it's it's such a good reminder that there are like small gestures that go such a long way. I love the Post-it note story. Yeah, I think this is really what our community looks for, is like these simple ideas that can make a huge impact, not only on their organization, but the lives of their colleagues and friends. So yeah, I don't know if I've ever seen this much positive feedback in a chat before for a webinar. So very, very nice work.
Yeah, well, you're gonna have to send it to me, because I know there's some ideas in here that I would love to adopt and pick up. And yeah, I said this in the beginning, but almost everything I shared, they were not my original ideas. I want to stress that they came from other leaders that we've spoken to. A lot of them came from candidates that, we spoke to in their job search. And these were reasons that they didn't want to leave their company, or, reasons that they chose to join a new company. Somebody, Joyce asked, I'll answer this one real quick before you guys break, but how do you build consistency in doing this for your team? It's a slow rollout. So I think the easiest way to explain it is my example where, I started with day-to-day. I didn't have a budget. I just knew that it felt good to acknowledge people, and I knew it would pay off. So I think a lot of it is leading by example. And then as we started to scale our team, people had felt it. They had, felt, the reward of getting a note on their desk or getting a shout out publicly on LinkedIn. And so they started to pay it forward. So I think it starts almost organically, leading by example. And then as you scale your team and this becomes more of a priority and you have more accountability partners in place, you really climb up that pyramid, make it more informal and then formal. And formal could be as simple as a checklist or reminders on a calendar just to make sure that you're consistent. All right. Well, I will wrap it up. We are at the hour. Thank you everyone for joining, and thank you everyone for all your comments and engagement in the chat. I'm really excited to read through these. Appreciate you all, and I hope to meet you all soon.